You are listening to the Empowering Working Moms podcast, Real Talk with Dr. Prianca Naik, a show to help professional moms in survival mode to take hold of their lives and thrive. If you're ready to take powerful action to create your best life, then this is the show for you. I'm your host, Dr. Prianca Naik, board-certified internal medicine physician and certified life coach. Now let's get to it and dive in. You are listening to the Empowering Working Moms podcast, episode number 49. Hello there, everybody. So it has been a year since I started this podcast. This is episode 49. So exciting. There were a couple weeks in there that I skipped, so that's why we're not at episode 52. But I am so grateful for all of you listeners out there who are listening to me, and I have the honor of having your time, which is so precious when you listen to this podcast. So thank you so much for tuning in today, whether you're a new listener or someone who's been listening in this past year. You're probably also high achieving, have perfectionistic tendencies, right? And you're a mom, you're tired, maybe struggling with exhaustion and burnout. You've checked all the boxes of success, but you're not happy. But you don't have to feel exhausted, okay? Imagine a life where there's no more exhaustion, no more burnout. You have more confidence, more peace of mind back. You have better interactions, a better relationship with your partner, with your kids. You're more patient. And I know this is possible for you because it has been for me and my clients. With a little bit of work, in 90 days or less, you can be out of burnout and enjoying your life again. And if you're doubting this, check out my free masterclass, 4 Steps to Overcome Burnout, Get Rid of Overwhelm, and Finally Get Your Peace of Mind Back. The link is in the show notes. And if you want to join my program and you're feeling really bold, you can go to program.stresscleansemd.com/work with me to see all about my program, what's inside of it, the results you'll get. And you actually can directly sign up to join today. So this is the final episode today in this 3-part series on dealing with hard times, because we all know that hard times are a part of life, whether we like it or not, they're going to happen. And the first part of this series, I talked about the 3 different categories of hard times. The second part, I talked about how to cope with hard times. I gave actionable tips. So check those out if you haven't listened to them yet. And today I'm going to focus on mindfulness as it relates to, or as it solves for hard times, and how we can really practice mindfulness. And I'm going to talk a little bit about Buddhist concepts as well in order to really get our peace of mind when bad things are happening. And what's really fascinating is this episode has been in the works, right? And actually, like the day before I recorded this, I received pretty stressful news. And I think that the news I received would send most people who haven't done this work into like obsession and anxiety and overwhelm. But truly, I use the tools that I mentioned last week. And also today's episode, I'm going to talk about other tools, mindfulness tools that really like they allow me to feel centered. I can also find joy even if there's something going on that is stressful, because truly we know the bad times, right? They come and they go. So we have power over how much we let things steal our joy or our peace. And these tools, which are teachable, and I'm teaching you, really can help to make you unshakable. And that's really where I am today. And I can say that with confidence and without feeling like I'm being pompous, because it's so learnable if you want to learn. So if you want to learn, listen up, okay? It's amazing what we can do when we take an active role in shifting our perspectives, our mindset, and really practice a little bit of discipline with our thoughts, along with mindfulness practice. So today we're going to talk about mindfulness and Buddhist principles, but not in a boring, snoring way, because I have read a lot of, Thich Nhat Hanh material, and I've read books by, what is the author of Wherever You Go, There You Are? That guy. I've read his books, and, it's pretty old dudes talking about this stuff, not to be ageist, but it makes it not relatable. And I just want to be able to put a relatable more modern spin on these age-old processes, okay? So here we go. And I'm also going to talk about my process that I've created called the 3N method towards the end of this episode, as well as my own mindfulness tool that I use. Okay. So the beauty of mindfulness is, besides being present in the present moment, it allows us to get thoughts and distance from our feelings. And when we can get that distance, we're not sucked into our narratives. We're not overtaken and overpowered by our negative stories and negative feelings. And it is so empowering to be able to practice that and know that you can have some control over your thought process and also your feelings in a way. Now, the initial feeling that you might have, the initial reaction to stuff, that's pretty visceral. I don't know how much control we have over that, but we can choose after our initial response, our reaction, our feeling, we can choose again and choose a different thought. So, one of the first noble truths of Buddhism is about recognizing the existence of suffering. And we sort of touched upon that, right? We know that there is suffering in our lives, that human suffering is universal, and that the hard times are going to happen in life, whether we like it or not. So the sooner we accept that, the better. So Thich Nhat Hanh, I am going to quote him in his book, You Are Here. He says that through suffering, we discover the fourth noble truth, which is the path to healing. And the fourth noble truth, which is called Marga, is the path that transforms suffering into well-being. And how do you think we can get from suffering into well-being? Well, it's through our mindfulness practice. And really the way we can do this, and I've talked about this in my episode on mindfulness early on, is saying to ourselves, there is a body, noticing our body, the weight of our bodies, the weight of gravity on our feet on the floor, feeling our pull even to the center of the earth, and really feeling the stability of our bodies. And what focusing on our bodies does is it really gets us out of our heads and into our bodies so that we're not obsessing as much. So we can do that. You can focus on the breath. We can count our breaths and really count 1 through 10. And as you're focusing on your breaths, again, you're going to get distance from those spinning thoughts, and you can become an observer of your thoughts or your feelings. And this is particularly helpful when we are dealing with a crisis or we feel threatened, because when we have a threat to our safety, or so we perceive it, that can send us into a fight or flight mode for survival. And that increases our suffering. That adds extra stress on top of the stressor, the circumstance that is stressing us out. So if we can actually take a second to be aware of when we are freaking out about a stressor, we can then connect ourselves to our bodies and our breath by what I've mentioned so far, right? Something to also remember in practicing mindfulness during hard times is that pain will not kill us. And I say this because we can allow ourselves to be present with the pain. We can focus on our breath, become an observer, sit with and notice the negative feelings. We can be present with them, and we can cry if we need. And we can really observe the pain of the hard time. And when we become an observer, we get that distance from our thoughts, from our negative emotions. So sitting with these emotions will really allow us to get past them sooner, because I'm sure you've heard the saying, what you resist persists. So if we resist these negative feelings, if we don't allow them in, if we can't sit with them, if we avoid them, they are going to come back later and probably even stronger. So sitting with our emotions also gives us the tools to not buffer with unhealthy habits like overeating, over drinking, over Netflixing, etc. And also practicing sitting with our emotions, becoming observers of them, and breathing and noticing. And when I say observing your emotion, what I mean is when you feel where your emotion is in your body. So it could be, for me, when I feel anxious or stressed, I get a tightening in my throat, and I observe that. So I notice that, right? So you notice, you observe, and then if you don't get too sucked into it, it really will go away. And by doing this and practicing this over time in our harder times and just in general, this really increases our resilience and keeps us out of the obsession out of swirling thoughts or like going down a rabbit hole that our brain wants to indulge in, because those rabbit holes, the stories, the obsessing, they can be so alluring. They are very, very, like, they're powerful because they're so deeply ingrained in our brains that it's almost like our brains automatically go to that to obsess, thinking that that's going to keep us safe from whatever bad thing is happening or might happen. If we can be aware that these stories and negative narratives and the obsessing is something that our brains are attracted to, then we can really be mindful and fight the force and really practice our mind body awareness, our mindfulness to not do that. So, managing your mind and practicing mindfulness is another strategy. And this really means not allowing yourself to spin stories or obsess over shit that doesn't matter. Okay. I had a client who was thinking about an awkward situation where she was tipping on a vacation at a resort. And I pointed out to her that it really didn't matter what happened there, because we don't have the brain space, the time, the energy to entertain stories and obsessing over whether we did something right. It doesn't exist. Like, we don't have that time and space. And so we have to be mindful with how we use our brains, how we use our brain space. And if we find ourselves obsessing over stuff that really doesn't matter in the long run, then it's really time to tell ourselves to drop the story. And if you can't and you still find yourself obsessing, then you really practice the mind body awareness. You get into your mind, you get into your body. This is very useful when your brain is spinning on inconsequential BS. In any given moment, you can also find peace. And the way to do this is to simply breathe, focus on your breath, feel yourself calming down as you take long, strong, deep breaths. So you can inhale up to, 8 or 9. You can even hold the breath and then you exhale. And this will activate your parasympathetic nervous system, which is more of a rest and digest system instead of, our fight or flight survival mode. Also, notice your shoulders and if they're, if they're hunched or if they're shrugged up, and really try and relax those as well. Another mindfulness practice with dealing with hard times or in general with stress, etc., is tuning into our body. So as I said, notice there is a body. And what you can do is you can do a body scan. You start at the top of your head and scan down all the way to your toes. Notice where there's any tension. And if you feel the tension anywhere, you can tighten those muscles, squeeze, and then release them. And then just breathe as you do that. And that really helps to relax our body. And as we're focusing on relaxing our body, then we feel more relaxed, but also we get ourselves out of our obsessing about, whatever bad is happening. Another way to use mindfulness in dealing with a tough time is to really slow down. So you slow down the mind, and you might be wondering, what is she talking about? Slow down the mind? Like, what does that mean? And what that means is that we don't multitask and we can focus on a single task at a time. So focus on what you're doing. If you're doing the dishes, notice the water on your hands, the sponge on the dishes, or if you're prepping a meal, just prep the meal. Don't be on your phone while you're doing that. Or a work task, just focus on that. Focus on one task at a time. And that really allows the brain to not be overloaded and overwhelmed. And then we're not adding into that feeling of overloadedness, overwhelm, exhaustion, stress, right? We're mindful and we can practice mindfulness by doing a single task at once. Also, when you're going through a hard time and you're feeling irritable or stressed, try to notice the good around you. And by good, I mean notice nature, get a breath of fresh air. I believe I spoke about this on the last podcast episode, but notice nature, observe, see the trees, the sun if it's shining, appreciate the rain. If your children are doing something kind, something sweet, something adorable, they're laughing, really soak that in, because you can feel the joy of your life. You can enjoy and be present in these moments and still be going through a tough time. It's not either or. It's not I have to be miserable because this is a horrible time. You can be going through a hard time and yet enjoy every step of your life. You can still enjoy many, many moments. And that really is, one of the secret sauces, like something I've discovered over time is that no matter how hard my life gets or has gotten, being able to tune in to the present moment and practice mindfulness has been a game changer for me. And as I believe I mentioned in the last episode, a lot of times people say that I'm strong and I'm this and I'm that. And of course, I am strong, but it's really not about that. It's about practicing these tools, being intentional when I'm living my life to really live my best life and find peace of mind and joy, even when extremely stressful situations are coming my way. And now I'm going to mention my own personal method. I call it the 3N method because it has 3 steps and it really does incorporate mindfulness into it for any unpleasant thought or feeling you might have. So, the first N is notice, then neutralize, then new. And I suggest really focusing on the noticing part if you're not well versed in this type of work and coaching, etc. Notice is where you notice the thought or feeling that's happening, right? And then you neutralize it. And to neutralize it, you become an observer of the thought or the feeling. So you can breathe while you do this and really work on not being one with your thought or your feeling and observing it. So once you become an observer, you take away its charge. And that's why that step is called neutralize. And then the last step of my 3N method is new, where you create a new thought or new feeling that you want to practice. But the third step of the 3N method is probably a more advanced step. And I would focus on noticing it first. And if you feel like you're getting good at being aware and noticing, then you can start working on becoming an observer and neutralizing. So try that. That's so great for any negative thoughts, feelings, any stressful things that come up. I use it all the time and it is very peace creating. It creates peace. So I say this because I literally used to obsess. And before I had kids, I would perseverate over like the dumbest shit, like catching a ferry on time. My friends and I were going to Fire Island. And while we were driving to catch the ferry, every 5 minutes, I would keep asking my sister, when's the ferry? What time is it? What time is it? How many minutes do we have left? As if catching the ferry, like catching the earlier or later ferry, like it mattered at all. Like it really didn't matter. And yet I was using so much of my brain space and energy to obsess over that. So I tell you this because look where I once was obsessing. And today I manage my mind, especially with my mindfulness practices like the 3N method. And I no longer struggle with that kind of, way of thinking. And if you struggle with that, I want you to know that there is hope if you put some of these practices into motion, into action. And I want to wrap up today's episode with a couple of quotes from Young Pueblo, who I have no affiliation with, but I highly recommend his book, Lighter and Clarity and Connection. So many great gems on healing and transforming as well. So from one of his excerpts, this is what he wrote: essentials to remember on tough days. Practice patience, accept what you feel, do not punish yourself, make sure you get good rest, give yourself ample kindness, accomplish smaller goals that day, do things that will calm your mind. A bad moment does not equal a bad life. Struggle can be a space for deep growth. This current discomfort is not permanent. And I love this so much that I actually copy and pasted it. I printed it out. It's on my bulletin board in my room. So I can look at it when I have a hard day. And it's so beautiful because it really summarizes a lot of what we've talked about in these past few episodes. And what I think I forgot to mention in these episodes is really giving yourself, or actually I did mention it in last time's episode, I believe, but giving yourself compassion and rest. And I think that's something we don't do enough. Like we just get to give ourselves a break sometimes, and it's totally okay. Like, we don't have to be machines. We don't have to be on the go 24/7 producing, being productive, and we can actually just give ourselves grace if there's some extra shit going on. Okay. And this is the last quote I'm going to mention. He writes, "They asked her, 'What is real happiness?' She answered, 'Happiness is not fulfilling every pleasure or getting every outcome you desire. Happiness is being able to enjoy life with a peaceful mind that is not constantly craving for more. The inner peace that comes with embracing change.'" And I bring this up, particularly at the end of this episode, as we wrap up this 3-part series on coping with tough times, because it's really important for us to know that there's no such thing as I'm going to be happy when. I'm going to be happy when this crisis is over. No, that's really not true, because life is a series, right, of ups and downs. And shit is always going to be hitting the fan, like, at some point or another. There are always going to be problems that we have to solve or that we get to solve. And so realizing that today is the day to be happy and not wait for the storm to pass. And the way in which we can do that is what I mentioned before, like really soaking in those happy moments, those moments of joy, the brief moments, or cultivating them by dancing in your kitchen, which I mentioned on the last episode. But knowing that we can create peace of mind, we can create joy in any given moment, no matter what is going on, truly. So if we can understand that change is happening, things go from good to bad and bad to good, and really just ride that with ease, then we're cultivating that peace and getting out of exhaustion and getting out of burnout, truly. So you too could have a burnout-free life, no exhaustion, more confidence, more peace of mind, really, because this is the work that I have done and I teach it to my clients. In 90 days or less, you could be truly out of burnout again and enjoying your life and getting out of exhaustion. To learn more, check out my free on-demand masterclass, The 4 Steps to Overcome Burnout, Get Rid of Overwhelm, and Finally Get Your Peace of Mind Back. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I will talk to you next week. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Empowering Working Moms podcast, Real Talk with Dr. Prianca Naik. If you are ready to get unstuck and out of survival mode to live your best life, I want to invite you to book a free 30-minute consultation call with me. To get started, visit priancanaikmdcoaching.as.me. Link in the show notes.